stop what you're doing. If you feel like you're hamster wheeling a bit and that your business isn't really seeing growth, you're not the first person to say that. But especially now in 2025, you probably need to adapt a new process to actually see real growth and get the team doing what they need to be doing so you can hit your revenue numbers. You can actually grow and expand. If you're a B2B leader that feels a little bit stuck, I challenge you to consider the industrial growth methodology. My name is Shane Torrey. I'm the Director of Client Experience here at Evenbound, and I want to walk through with you, at least in this video, the first phase to actually build this new methodology and ultimately create a go-to-market strategy. We're going to walk through the framework. Like I said, we're going to walk through the first phase in this video, and I'll create a couple more videos to walk through the second and third phases, but it's so important you build a great foundation to this that I don't want to skip over anything important. With this go-to-market strategy, you ultimately need to make sure that it's not just having a plan, but that you have the right people in the right place to execute what this vision is going to be. So if you don't have the right people in the right seat, even the best strategies are going to end up failing. Ultimately with this, let me move my face up here. Your strategy needs to be simple, actionable, and results driven. So if you have the right framework in place, you will end up being market ready to go ahead and experience whatever growth revenue you need. You actually put the right goal in place that you think is attainable, and we can talk through that a little bit later on. To make this all happen, you have to be open to change, though. If you are not open to adjusting your processes or considering new technologies and just doing things the way you've been doing it, you are going to continue to hamster wheel because let's face it, doing things the old-fashioned way, scribbling notes on sheets of paper, keeping track of everything in a spreadsheet, not saying they're not useful, but not having the right tools in place to manage this data and notify you when to strike when the iron's hot, that's just going to set you behind. So if you have the methodology of like, oh, well, we've always done it this way, or, oh, I want the sales team doing this and that because that's just what they need to do, you need to throw it out the window and just be open to doing something differently. If you don't, frankly, others in your industry are going to be surpassing you because they are open to change. So you need to be open to change too. Like I said, we're going to cover the first phase here, which is create. We're going to talk through your brand, market position, product services, ideal customer profile, and your website strategy. In other videos, we'll talk through the phase two, which is building your processes, systems, technology, collecting the right data, and putting the action plan in place. And then in stage three or phase three, which is going to be strategy launch, execution, and making sure that the team is playing the right part. In this first phase here, you want to talk through goals and objectives. So you want to make sure that your goals are SMART, which would be specific, measurable, achievable, realistic, and timely. You don't want to just create a goal that pulling it out of thin air or say, oh, well, we need to hit this because of I don't really know why. You need to know why. So by using a SMART goal, you can actually put well-defined goals in place and have a solid maybe like a quarterly goal, annual goal, and look beyond to actually having an annual 3-month and 5-year goal as well. Just as an example here, a good SMART goal would be to increase sales qualified leads or SQLs by 30% over the next 90 days by expanding brand reach into adjacent markets through targeted advertising and demand generation efforts. Do you see how we packed a lot into that goal to say, hey, like, here's what it's going to be. It should be pretty attainable. We're going to do it over this period of time, and here's how we're going to do it. When we talk through brand identity, you want to make sure that you have at least 7 core components. So name and logo, the visual and verbal representation of your brand pillars. These are your core values. This is what really these core things that you stand by as your business. So you want to make sure that you're very selective in how these core values are going to be defined because it's what you and all of your employees need to abide by to do the great work for your company. Mission and purpose essentially is the why behind what you're doing. Your voice and tone is how you communicate with your team. Products and service, what you're offering, how it actually solves a problem. You don't want to create a product that just doesn't really do what people need it to do. You need to make sure that there is something that you're actually solving for out there in the world. Messaging, the key narratives and defining your positioning. And then finally, the visual identity, making sure that your colors, typography, and imagery are all consistent because if they're not and you have just off branding and all your different collateral, people are not going to quite know, is this the same company that I was working with over here? Um, it's just going to create confusion and ultimately make it harder to build trust. When we talk through defining market positioning, you want to think through who's your industry, what's the category, the size, position, market opportunity. If you have too broad of a market, then you're diluting your efforts and you're trying to just attract everybody. And if everyone's your customer, then nobody's really your customer. If it's too narrow, then you're going to find that just ultimately you reach a couple of people that you really want to sell to. And once you've done that, you can't really expand. So you need to make sure that you don't get caught in the trap of being too niche. You also don't want to be too broad because then it's hard to make messaging really unique and personalized to reach those that you want to reach. When you think about product market fit, ultimately you want to have high need and a unique and important product. If you find that maybe you have high need, but it's very common or commoditized, there's going to be a lot of competition, which is fine, but you need to make sure that ultimately you're better than the rest. And that's just going to be hard if a lot of others do the same exact thing that you do. If you find that there's low need and it's common and commoditized, that's a dead zone, right? Because no one really needs it. Honestly, it's just going to be like very, very competitive. Like a lot of people, um, can get access to it. Just there's not really going to be much of a growth for you. Where you want to be, again, is the high need and being unique and important. Those are the two values that you need to take away from this. And ultimately, how do you sell your product? You need to have ideal customer profiles. You need to figure out who exactly you want to go after. Don't just set something because you think it kind of makes sense. Like do the real research, talk with your current customers, and look at your data wherever you have it to understand who exactly do I want to reach. Essentially, you need to have firmographics, which would be your industry, company size, location, their budget that they can spend on products and services that you offer, and ultimately their performance. So, um, do they have a strong financial record? Um, if startups happens to be your game, like what kind of startup? How can you better break that down so you don't target the wrong startup? Those are just things you want to think about as you're building your ICP. Technographics, which would be the different tools and tech stacks that they use. So, like for example, you could say that someone has to use an ERP system. Um, in this example for Acme Corporation, they have a CRM with interest in CRM integration. So let's say if we want to get someone onto, say, HubSpot, where Evenbound's an expert, we would say, hey, they maybe have another CRM, but they're not quite happy with it and looking to layer something on top of that. You also want to take a look at psychographics. So this would be really identifying what are the pain points, the values, and their attitudes and behavior, right? So you understand, hey, this ICP constantly struggles with this. Here's what we know that they value, and here's how we can create the solution or at least position our product as that solution to solve for those two things. You also want to understand their attitudes and behaviors, like are they going to be hesitant towards certain value propositions, or are they very price sensitive? Those are just things you want to address before you get too far down the rabbit hole and start targeting someone that you just don't really have the messaging prepared to, meet their need. And where I'm going to leave you today is having a solid website strategy. So, you can have a lot of aesthetics. You can think that you build out all these pages just on a whim because you think it would be cool. But ultimately, your website needs to be usable. You need to have very clear calls to action. You need to make sure that you have pages designed for each of those personas, which we're going to talk about later. But each person that might buy from you, or each industry that you serve, each application, each use case, make sure you have clear navigation, clear pages that identify all these things, and ultimately that will put you in a better position to have a website that can be navigated. It explains clearly what you do, and then it gives people a great way to reach out to you. If you don't really have those components, then you are going to struggle a bit to actually reach people in the digital age. So I'm going to leave you there. Look forward to the next video where we talk through phase 2, how we actually start to put some of these pieces into a strategy.